What's up? What's up? What is up, Ascenders? Welcome back to another episode of the Awaken Podcast, brought to you by yours truly, Brian M. Henry. I'm the founder of Together We Ascend and the Ascend Academy over at togetherweascend.com, and of course, your host of the show. For those of you that are tuning back in, welcome back, Ascenders. And if this might just be your first time joining us for the show, we want to welcome you to the Ascending Journey. So just about to fire up a few things here in preparation for what is going to be a high vibratory transmission, because I'm feeling the vibes, I'm feeling the love, and I'm looking to support you in doing so as well. All right. Here we are. There are many ways of describing this sense, the state, the experience that we evolve into, that we ascend into on this journey of ascension, awakening, however you want to refer to this growth, this evolution that we undergo. One of the ways that we can describe what is taking place is the opening of our hearts and the awakening of a sense of compassion. I believe we can all relate to the sense of joy and fulfillment that is found in being in an experience in which we are feeling connected to others, caring for them. There is inherently this sense of meaning and fulfillment that comes from being in such an experience where we're seeing the other, or feeling that sense of connection with them. And I'm sure we can also relate to being in a state in which we feel more closed off, more isolated, disconnected. And so I know that the type of listeners tuning into this show, those of you in the Ascenders community, are very likely able to relate to both of these experiences. And so I don't need to do any convincing as to why this cultivation of a sense of compassion is inherently something that serves us and all of those around us. So do know that this is a sense that can be cultivated with the right intention and knowing how to go about it, which I hope to support you in today. We can deepen in our sense of compassion, not just for others, but for ourselves as well. And it's in being in this intention and making this a practice that we're able to do so. So how do we go about awakening to compassion? This on an energetic level is felt, from my experience, within the heart space. There is a energetic, sensational, somatic sensation that is endured, that is felt when we open our hearts, when we open that energetic center up. And so this practice entails both body and mind coming together to feel and experience this sense of compassion. And through being in that heart space, through feeling what that feels like right here in that chest region, and conscious intention towards opening that space, Again, bringing our awareness to and opening the sense of spaciousness there. That practice of awareness has a way of allowing for this deeper sense of connection to be felt with others. And so I think it's really important that we bring awareness to this energetic practice, this practice of being in the body, being in the heart, rather than just considering that this is something that's cultivated with the mind. Now, that has its place, and it certainly will be something that we discuss today. But do understand that it's this integration between the opening of the heart and the awakening of the mind through compassionate thinking, through recognizing, through undergoing the practice of reprogramming ourselves, both body and mind, that we're able to awaken a sense of compassion. Now, one of the things that I find gets in the way of this actually is being overly caught up in the mind. This, I think, is a tendency for many in this day and age, where being overly immersed with the thinking mind, overly identified with it, can cause for this sense of constriction that happens in the body and the heart. So that's why I begin with saying that it's this practice of coming into this body and that energetic opening of the heart. And what acts as a resistance, a block to this, is again being overly immersed in the mind and constricted in a sense of fear, identification, thinking too much, being too heavily involved with thinking about this identified self. Right in this, we can see how if we're thinking, or we're overly immersed in this thinking about the self, the small self, the egoic self, that has this way of cutting us off from being more open to, being attentive to the connection we share with others. And so I say again, you'll probably hear me say it a few times now, it's about being in the heart, dropping in the body, practicing that sense of mindfulness and presence. Now, that practice of mindfulness entails both being mindful of what is experienced within your energy, as well as being mindful, attentive to what you're perceiving as being outside of yourself in the world around you. Getting in touch with our own suffering is fundamental to feeling a sense of compassion for others. For if we don't allow ourselves practice feeling a sense of self-compassion, we will be hard-pressed to feel any sort of compassion or care for others. Because when we get in touch with our own suffering, that opens up a way for us to relate to others and recognize that they too undergo their own experience of suffering. But we must show care for ourselves. We must be willing to get in touch with our own suffering in order for us to really experience that sense of care for the suffering of others. So getting in touch with our own suffering is, again, a practice of being mindful of the energies within us. Because that will be experienced not just emotionally, but within the body as well. And staying open to that, being willing to face that and feel that, acknowledge that, and let it know that you're there becomes a stepping stone for seeing the other and helping them feel that you're there. Be willing to face what it is you're feeling with acceptance and self-compassion, for letting yourself know that you care about how you feel becomes a gateway for helping others feel that you care as well. For you, in fact, actually feeling a sense of care for them. Self-compassion opens up way for compassion for the other. And with this practice of mindfulness, again, entailing the mindfulness, the awareness of what we're feeling emotionally, energetically, physically, we expand that awareness to entail attentiveness to the other. I once really recently heard that the greatest form of love, the truest form of love, is attention. The truest way to give love for another, to another, express love towards another, is through offering them your attention. For it's in seeing the other that you bring them to life, that you help them feel seen. And there's no truer gift of compassion than that. We must see them as beings that are real, that just like us, have their own thoughts, have their own feelings, their own perspectives, their own beliefs, and their own experience. Because if we don't see others as being individuals, beings in their own experience, this cuts us off from feeling for them, feeling care for them. And it might sound a little bit off to say that you have to see them as real. But consider for a moment that you have, as I think all of us have, lived in a state in which those around you, those passerbys, were kind of just backdrops in the story that you're living. Where you were this main character, and I'm not saying that you aren't in your own experience, but there can be this way of being so closed off in our own experience that we forget to acknowledge or realize and see that those around us are also in their own experience, also dealing with their own feelings, also undergo a sense of suffering. But there's something that magically and beautifully, in fact, happens when we're able to see others as being real and we truly offer them our attention. And now this definitely, I think, is going to first begin with seeing those that are close to you, that you have a relationship with. But we can expand this sense into feeling this way, recognizing this in the stranger across the street. And what I'm describing here is the opening up to an experience of compassion for the other that will invoke in you a deep sense of love and connection for and with the world. And it's through this attentiveness, this practice of mindfulness, seeing the other, that we open up to this. So this becomes a day-to-day practice. Feeling a sense of compassion, living in a state of compassion is something that we should look to cultivate in our moment-to-moment state. For I say again, it's inherently fulfilling, purposeful, enjoyable to be in such a sense and experience. But just like a seated meditation practice in which you take time to sit down with intention, set aside time to meditate. The same way in which that mindfulness meditation practice can have a carryover to living in a state of mindfulness in your day-to-day, you can also benefit from a cultivation of compassion practice, a practice in which you are in the intention of feeling a sense of compassion for the inherent enjoyment and sense and expansion that occurs in that moment of this practice. But then, of course, again, supporting the cultivation of compassion in your day-to-day. And so what I'd like to offer you today is a practice that I came by within the last 6 months or so, I'd say, that has, I would say, deeply supported me in awakening compassion. And I hope I'm saying this right, because it just occurred to me that before putting up the stream, I don't think I've ever heard anyone use this word. I've read it. I want to say it's pronounced Tonglen. This is a Buddhist practice that seeks to awaken the compassionate heart and mind in an individual. And again, I've had some experience with this, and I wouldn't be sharing it with you if I didn't believe that it could certainly positively support an individual in their growth. So if you're curious to give this a shot, here's my personal take on how to go about, or how I've been going about, this Tonglen Buddhist practice. And this is not to say that this is the right way or the one way, but this is the way that I've been going about it. And that has certainly been working for me. The practice begins with first getting in touch with your own suffering. Now, Tonglen, translated, is also a practice of giving and receiving. So the focus here is certainly offering compassion to another, for another. However, I've personally found that initiating this practice with first feeling a sense of self-compassion and getting in touch with our own suffering can be a powerful first step. Not absolutely necessary. You can immediately begin with this step of feeling a sense of compassion for another. But I guess what I'll say here is that if at any time if perhaps feeling into the suffering of another feels a little bit more challenging at first, again, this first step of first getting in touch with your own suffering, I find to be an effective first step. So allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling, not looking to feel suffering, not looking to suffer, but being honest with yourself about what's already presently there. Some perhaps area in your life, struggle that you're feeling a sense of constriction and suffering around. Being honest with yourself about this. It may help to put a hand on the chest in this moment of feeling what you're feeling. And as you do, as it arises, as recollection of the sense and aspect of your experience arises within your being and perhaps your mind's eye, being with that and letting your suffering know that you're there. Letting yourself know that you're there and that you care. Perhaps offering yourself the affirmation, I care about this suffering. I care about this suffering. I care about my suffering. Again, not looking to find yourself in the shadows, but being with and being honest with yourself about what's there. And if there is a sense of tightness, constriction, sadness, suffering, being with that and letting yourself know that you're there. And as you allow yourself to feel that, next opening yourself up to the remembrance that others feel suffering as well. And you may bring to your mind a specific person that is close to you, that you care about, any person that you want to offer this sense of compassion for, feel a sense of compassion for. It may not even be someone that you consider to be close to you. But as you bring this person to mind and heart, and you see them in your mind's eye, the practice of Tonglen, or giving and receiving, is undergone by inhaling the suffering and pain, not taking it on, but with the inhale, allowing yourself to feel it, and then exhaling a sense of care. Inhaling, allowing yourself to feel for the other, feel what they're feeling, and exhaling a sense of care. And now again, I want to say that you don't need to take on another person's suffering to offer them compassion. But in this practice of Tonglen, allowing yourself to feel for them has this a way of awakening the heart and mind. You don't become a sacrificial lamb in this as much as it is about being there to support the other, and letting them know that they're not alone. And perhaps they might not even consciously know this, but I promise you when I say you undergoing this practice has an effect beyond what you can imagine. Visuals may help here. I find that as you breathe in, whatever feels aligned for you in terms of a visual expression of allowing yourself to feel those emotions, that density. And then as you exhale, what you invoke there is a process of transmutation. You're exhaling that sense of care. You're breathing light and love into those emotions, into that suffering for this person. Breathing in a sense of relating to their suffering, and exhaling a sense of care. Now this practice grows and expands and becomes something more, something greater. The more we're able to expand that sense of compassion outwardly, it might first begin with ourselves, become something then that we feel for another, that we offer another, that we feel for another. And then we allow ourselves to feel compassion for more, for a greater amount of people, for perhaps the entire world. Or perhaps focusing on one area, individuals that may be feeling a sense of suffering around a particular issue or struggle in their life. Opening up that circle of compassion for all those that are going through something similar. And as you do this, you continue to breathe in what is being felt by others, and breathing out that sense of care. And as you do this, as you open yourself up to be willing to face and feel for others, and you practice this sense of caring for the other, you awaken in yourself a sense of compassion. I do want to give a quick shout out here to those in the live stream here. I see comments from both Misha, and I want to say that's pronounced Discog, from both Facebook and YouTube. Thank you to those of you that are here with us, opening your hearts up, awakening yourselves to a sense of compassion for each and every individual that allows themselves to feel, relate to what is being felt on this planet, in this collective consciousness, with the intention of feeling for the other, seeing them, offering them your care. Each and every one of you is supporting the awakening of the collective consciousness to unity. And there's no greater purpose or service, I believe, that we can serve. So thank you for all of you that are tuned in here, that are also in the intention, consciously in the intention of awakening your hearts and mind, awakening to compassion. I hope that this practice that I've shared with you is able to serve you, support you in doing just that. Because I also want to wrap things up here with saying that this is equally about us as it is about you. And your most fulfilling, meaningful, purposeful, joyous experience is one in which you've awakened to a sense of compassion for yourself and for all others. Ascenders, that's going to be it for this content that I felt inspired to share with you, this practice. I again have found myself feeling more connected with those around me through this practice. I hope that it's able to support you in the same. Before we go here, one little request. I'm going to ask the you that have been assisted by the content, have been enjoying it, perhaps checking this out on YouTube Live or Facebook Live, or you're listening to this on one of your favorite podcast platforms. For those of you that have been tuning into the show, thank you for being here. I'm going to ask of you to support the show, myself, and the collective in sharing this content out with 1 to 3 people that you care about. And by supporting them, know that you too support the all, because we're in this thing together, family, and together we ascend. Thank you for listening, Ascenders. That's going to be all for this episode of the Awaken Podcast. So until next time, keep ascending.